Not working now.
Okay. Good evening, members. It's 6 o'clock. It hasn't chimed, but it's 6 o'clock, so we will start. We have a fairly short agenda, as you can all see. Famous last words, of course, but at any rate, let's crack on. Welcome to everybody. I've been advised that there are no fire drills planned for tonight, but if the alarm does sound, Mrs. Snook on my right will ascertain the situation and provide further instructions. I would remind you that this meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Maidstone Borough Council website. But will anyone else be recording or filming the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening, but I don't think there's going to be any danger of that. So, members who are using mobile phones or tablets are asked please to ensure that these are on silent and are only being used with regard to the business on the agenda this evening. I think we all know the words by heart by now. Okay. Apologies. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I think we have one, which is Councillor Prendergast, if I'm right in saying. Are there any substitute members? Are there any substitute members? None, I can see, so let's move on. Visiting members? None. I think I can do that myself. Remember, this is webcast, so we've got to be careful. Agenda item 4. James, I think I hand this one to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 4, I'm requesting that this item be withdrawn from the agenda. My reasons for requesting that to members tonight is due to unresolved issues surrounding affordable housing and the relationship with the written ministerial statement that was reinstated, the 2014 ministerial statement, and the subsequent emerging policy SP20, which takes its direct draw from the ministerial statement. Obviously, you'll notice in the report it doesn't discuss the issues of affordable housing, and obviously, in your officer's view, the SP20 policy is a considerable important matter regarding affordable housing and how that changes the equation. So I've requested that that is withdrawn from the agenda. We will negotiate with the applicants over the issues on affordable housing, and I'll bring the report back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Is everybody happy with that, I'm sure? Yeah? Good, agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Date of adjourned meeting. Well, goodness, I hope we don't need an adjourned meeting. If we do, it's the 10th of April. Okay. Agenda item 6, urgent items, there are none, which is nice to know. So agenda item 7, disclosures by members and officers. Any disclosures? None? Okay. Disclosures of lobbying? Councillor Round. I apologise, I was jumping the gun.
Sorry, I did state this before, but obviously on agenda item 13, I do live in very close proximity of said building and site. In fact, I'm just off the map enclosed in the papers. I just thought that would be of interest to people.
Thank you, Councillor Round. That will be certainly noted. Agenda item 8, disclosures of lobbying. Any lobbying? Will be lobbied. That's the easier option, isn't it? Okay. Have you, on a serious note, I haven't been lobbied, so I don't know if anybody else has. Councillor Rand. On item 13. Okay, fine. Okay, agenda item 9. I move that the remaining items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Agenda item 10, minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of March. Councillor English.
Once we've approved this for accuracy, I do want to raise a point on page 7, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councillor English. Yep.
Well, I thought we might approve them for accuracy or not first, and then come back to the point I want to raise.
For accuracy, can you just, sorry.
Well, normally we go for the minutes and say whether they're right or not. but I'm not querying the minute. I just want to raise a point from the minutes, which is different. So, a matter arising, if you would, Mr. Chairman. So, I think if in normal procedure would be to approve them first.
As I understand it, you've got a matter arising under the minutes. Yes,
yes, Mr.
So we
Chairman.
approve the minutes first and
Yes,
then take the matter
please.
arising. I'm sorry if I was a bit slow.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we agree the minutes first? Agreed. Lovely. Okay, Councillor English, the floor is yours.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman, if I've caused you any confusion. Under item 343, appeal decisions, where we go on to talk about the reference, very important reference, in my opinion, to the very worthy committee chaired by Councillor Matt Borton. I just want to try and nail this down a bit, because a future report be included on the agenda for a future meeting to enable members to, etc., is a bit vague. What I'd like to propose is that we try and structure this a little bit more. Mr. Chairman, I understand that the arrangements, a request has been made to convene a political group spokespersons meeting. I'd like to suggest, if the committee are appropriate, that an agreement that the group spokespersons try and draw together what the planning committee's concerns are at this stage, and any committee members with views on this should put those views forward to their group spokespersons, and that we prepare a report as members to come back to this committee, and that following that discussion of that report, that a coherent resolution reference be passed on to Councillor Borton's committee in good time for its July meeting, so that we do not lose any sense and we're not coming back in 6 months' time asking where the report is. I hope that will be reasonably satisfactory and would enable us to consult members, substitute members, and indeed wider throughout the council, and get a considered view to put forward to Democracy Committee. I hope Councillor Borton doesn't have a problem with that. If he does, I'm quite willing to vary my proposal appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't have a problem with that in principle. The next meeting of the Democracy Committee, next proper meeting, isn't until July anyway, and there are obviously a few more plannings beforehand, including a meeting, I assume, of political group spokespeople. So personally, I don't have a problem with the suggestion that Councillor English has just made in order to get the word in as tight as possible, because I think we all know what an important issue it is that we're talking about, and I think it's very important within the constitution of this council that we ensure that that we are discussing the matters of great importance here, and so I'd be very happy to support Councillor English's proposal thereby.
Can I just say a couple of words? It's unlikely that we'll be able to arrange a spokespersons meeting before the end of this month now, but the spokespersons will be reappointed at the meeting of the committee on the 25th of May. Does that cause a problem, Shaw?
I understood that the chairman and Mr. Bailey had actually requested a meeting in the near future. So,
yeah, I have been in communication with obviously Debbie, who would arrange that meeting, and what we did discuss at that meeting was the issue. I think it's on the 23rd. Actually, we've got the meetings, isn't it? Is it 25th, when they appointed new spokesperson? Sorry, when the vice and vice chair of the planning committee is appointed, and then subsequently also you get the election of the spokespersons meeting. Now, I suppose the difficulty is we potentially could arrange a spokespersons meeting before that time. It's a question of whether we could get everyone together towards the end of the month. So it's certainly something that we could do, and we could put that request out. There's 5 spokespersons, so I think it could be arranged, if that's what members wish.
I think this would be a very good idea, because it's an issue that is very important, and so I'd be very happy with that if that's was the view.
Just thinking about the timing.
There is a timing issue, obviously, but...
So I'm just thinking aloud, the timings, because if we have the spokespersons meeting to draft something up to then come back to this planning committee, we've got committee meeting on the 27th, there's the next one, planning committee, and then the one after that we've got is the 25th of May. So there's quite a timing issue. We'd need to get the spokespersons meeting agreed kind of next week in order to get some report drafted up. It's quite short timescales, that's all I'm...
Chairman, are you seeking thoughts from the committee this evening? Was that not the case? Okay.
Yeah, I do think it's important to try, even if our own spokespersons get information from this existing committee, because it's based upon what our experience has been over this year. And I know that we're not due for a whole change of MBC, but people may change positions on different committees. And so I think it is important that certainly, as long as the spokespersons, if they're going to carry on, should get information from past members if they leave the committee. So I'm fine with it taking however long it's got to take, but I think it's important that people feed into it if it's going to go then to democracy.
I totally agree. But if we can push it forward, then let's try. If we can't, then we have to...
Okay. Well, if it's all right with members, I'll liaise with Debbie and then liaise with the spokespersons and communicate that way about timing issues, and we'll try to get something out to you and see how we can manage it.
Okay. So is everybody happy with that? Councillor English, you're okay with that?
I'm happy, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there are going to be huge changes
Okay.
because it's county election year, so...
Yeah. All right. So good. If everybody's happy, we can move on. Okay. Thank you, Councillor English, for raising that. It's a very important point. Okay. Agenda item 11, presentation of petitions, none. Agenda item 12, deferred items. Oh, yes. We're back to our old friend, I think. If
I'm not going to update on item 1 because unfortunately the case officer is still sick and has been so for the last 6 to 7 weeks. So I'm reluctant to reassign. I have asked the principal officer that is a must, that it needs to be sorted out. So I have relayed that to him. So apologies that it's still not on the agenda. It's certainly rather embarrassing for me, if I must add. And the second item, obviously the principal officer has had discussions currently. There have been meetings held to look at some of the issues that members raised. An air quality assessment has been received and it's going through that process currently.
Okay, thank you. Right. Now we just come on to... there are only 2 items out really on the agenda, apart from the section 106, I realise that. The agenda item 13, which is reference 15/504/300, land north of 61 Naves Acre, Headcorn, Kent. There are no speakers, as you can see. We had discussed this on a previous meeting. We know the issues, and the report is, I think, very, very clear as well. So what I'm going to do before we make a presentation, I'm going to ask the ward member whether he'd be happy if we went straight to a decision on this. Councillor Round.
I am.
Okay. So, unusually, do you want to... Okay. I was going to move from the chair, actually, but you can second Councillor English. I'm fine with that. To move that we approve subject to the conditions. Does everybody agree with that? I thought we all put our hands up. Is there... Well, okay. Okay.
Could you put your hands up, please? Sorry, I
One abstention. Okay, against? Abstention. Councillor Clark. And Councillor Rand. Does it add up? Make sure it adds up. No, it does. It adds up. Well, thank you very much. So we've approved subject to conditions. Right. The next item, agenda item 15, is a TPO. But before I give this to members, I'm going to ask our legal advisor who wishes to make a statement to update us.
Thank you, Chair. You may have been aware that it was proposed that the Land of London Lane application was to be judicially reviewed on Section 288. Unfortunately, Council there was an oversight by Council and the papers were filed a day late. As such, the application wasn't made in time and therefore is not going forward on a 288 application.
Councillor English.
Just want you to confirm, Mr Chairman or Mr Fitzpatrick, that we are actually querying the consistency of inspectors' decision-making with the Equality Assurance Unit of the Inspectorate, because that's the only action we can take at this stage.
Yep.
Yes, I have a current outstanding complaint letter to the Inspectorate regarding a number of inconsistent appeal decisions, and I sent that to the Inspector a month ago. I had a chase-up letter to him earlier this week and said, you know, the Council, this inconsistency is continuing. I don't know if members seen some later decisions. Whilst they're very good and they are all in our favour, you'll see on the back of the papers today that there are a lot of dismissed appeal decisions, but what is coming forward is a lot of inconsistent decisions coming forward. And what I'm relating to inconsistency is mainly about 5-year supply and the public perception that is being spread by that. This does relate to the London Lane appeal issue, but the Council, to my mind, had a very strong case on that, principally based on process and procedure that the Inspectorate hadn't followed. Well, we considered they hadn't followed. I can't go into too much detail, but notwithstanding that, one of the key issues on that case was about 5-year supply. So, to be short, yes, we are complaining to the Quality Assurance Unit. I am chasing up a response on that, and as and when I get it, I will relay the contents of that response back to members.
Thank you, James, for that. Right. Back to agenda item 15. We were asked to confirm, without modification, the tree preservation order. Councillor Clark? Go for it. Second. Can I have a show of hands to confirm? Excellent. So we confirm without modification. Thank you, members. Okay. So we're on to agenda item 16, which is the section 106 update. James, do you want to give us an introduction? It's Philip.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Now, this is a slightly different report that's coming forward, partly as a result of the political spokespersons meeting that we had, where members had requested some additional information in terms of project delivery, and also as part of the Section 106 audit report, which obviously requested that members be provided more information in terms of some of the project delivery issues. So, in conjunction with the Section 106 officer, with Jason Taylor and Phil Newcomb, what is in front of you, I mean, I'm principally going into public open space, parks and recreation. You'll note that we're holding 2.05, just over £2 million in terms of our open space contributions. And just going through the report, the front page sets out the contributions that we're holding. So these are all held in the Council's accounts. And the first page, you'll see on page 50, sets out exactly which particular area the monies are held in. For instance, healthcare is 927,000. We hold that on behalf of the CCG, and we pay that money to them when there is a request for that, the need for that facility arising from the contribution that members approved, obviously, on the development. Going through the actual report, you've got on the top hand in the blue, it sets out the Section 106, the site. It goes down into public open space recreation. You'll notice through the report that's the biggest contribution that's held. And then as we go through the rest of the report, you've got other other areas, and it says other sums. So those are the other sums of money that are held by the council. What we do is we set out the amount spent to date, what it's been spent on, and you've also got a project status and a spend by date. You've got a traffic light system, because obviously some of the Section 106 have spend by dates on them, and you'll notice on the right-hand column there is a green, amber and red. That's our flagging system to say when the monies need to be spent by, so we're making sure that we don't have to pay those monies back. So that's what that traffic light system does, and then in effect I'll hand you over to members to discuss the contents of the report. What I haven't done is ask Jason Taylor and Philip Newcombe to come here tonight, and that is on the basis that I don't know, in terms of what's arising from the questions coming out of this, if there are particular issues that members wish me to feed back to the Parks and Recreation team, I can do that. If members wish this report for either of those two individuals to come back to members to set out any of those issues, obviously that can be arranged as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have some speakers. Councillor Harwood first, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was really quite critical the last time this report came along at the inaccuracies that were in it, that legally I was concerned they wouldn't stand up because the site descriptions were wrong and so on. I think we've gone a long way. It's still not right, but we've gone a long way to making it a lot better, so you can at least recognise we're talking about Maidstone in some ways, but I think there's still some of the site descriptions and place names are still a little bit awry, but I think we're getting there. However, I really do believe that there is a thread of dysfunctionality running through our entire Section 106 delivery. If you look onto the second page of this report, which actually has the applications to which the Section 106s allow, and then you look what year the applications were approved or submitted, and as you can see, 03, 05, 06, 06, 01, 05, 04, 06, and yet the areas where we needed the investment, they've been in critical need of investment for decades, and yet we are not delivering. And there is something wrong in the system whereby we do not have the resources to actually spend the money, and we're either getting these kind of ambers and reds about losing the money. There is a false economy here. You know, what we should be doing is having enough staff resource to actually ensure that we deliver upon the Section 106. The council, the way that we've got funding changes and so on, we're more and more cash strapped, and yet we've got more than £3 million in the coffers waiting to be spent, an urgent need in our community. So there is something wrong in this council in the way that we're doing this. The other big problem is that in order to deliver, we're having to spend money on effectively consultancies and kind of delivery project groups and so on. So the money goes on that and not actually on the project. Whereas actually you look at the really good schemes, it's the one where the council's got involved or the parish council got involved and saying we just went and spent it. When I've seen money just swallowed up on meetings that no one attends and people who don't know the area coming in, and I actually I've been so upset by them that I'm just refusing to take part because it's just I just find it so difficult. And I know this isn't our problem. This is a parks problem, effectively. But because the money is coming out of planning permissions, I think we have a duty as planners, as a planning team, and to somehow fix this, to flag it up and to get it fixed. I actually believe that back in the old days, when Section 106 used to effectively be delivered by planners, and we used to keep the money for open spaces, and we used to do various things, it worked a lot better than when we now hand it over to parks, because I think there are very strong agendas within that team which are being pursued, which are not necessarily the agendas that I think we as a committee were thinking about when we agreed the legal agreements, or we recommended the Section 106s as ward councillors or in this committee. So I think we're getting there. I think that the schedule is absolutely head and shoulders above the last versions that we've had. I think we're going in the right direction. Where we've got the problem now is on the officer delivery and how we achieve that. And I certainly, for my part, I would like a Section 106 delivery officer, perhaps, so we're not just looking at the schedule, we're actually implementing the projects, making sure that the works are going on the ground, rather than, you know, they're sitting for 15, 10 years, whilst our wards see, you know, a state of collapse in terms of some of our community infrastructure, particularly our children's play areas. I mean, to my mind, we're going to have a huge amount, you know, we're getting ever more development and potential through community infrastructure levy. We'll potentially have more money to play with, and yet we've got this legacy of 10-year-old, 12-year-old Section 106s. And yeah, we've got open spaces. I mean, for example, Sandling Place, which I presume is Sandling Park, where the open space has never had anything done with it since, when was it permitted? If you look on here, 2003. And what, we're in 2017 now. The only management that's actually gone on has been a little bit by the local residents and local councillors. And yet there's a condition on that planning application saying that the site will be designated as local nature reserve, not saying it might be, it's a condition saying it will be designated as a local nature reserve, yet we have a parks team who are saying we definitely won't have any more nature reserves because, you know, that's not in our business. And yet we've got an outstanding condition saying we've got to do it. We've got zero management in the intervening nearly, ridiculous, more than 10 years. Think something has got to change.
I've got a note, but would you just respond to that, James?
Yeah, just so I can keep, because I know there'll be probably lots of questions, just so I can keep on track. Just the 2 points that Councillor Harwood has raised. Totally take on board what you say. With regard to the permission dates, obviously some of the dates, remember going back the old days, you had 5 years to implement the consent. So there will be a time lag from when the planning permission and when they implement, and then the triggers on the Section 106. So obviously, as part of the Section 106, we negotiate the triggers, and that normally comes in terms of depending on a viability and a discussion. So you'll get your planning permission when you get it, say say it came in 2003 regarding the Sandling Place one. That might have had a 5-year implementation. It might have been implemented in, say, 4 years' time. Then you'll get a lag on the payment of the monies because of whenever the trigger was set. So I just want to put that in context, that you just have to bear that in mind. I'm not trying to make an excuse on it, but you have to bear that in mind. Sometimes there is quite a lag before when you grant the permission and the money actually comes into the council's coffers. With regard to a project delivery officer, I totally see where you're coming from on that point, and certainly there has been a meeting between Dawn Hudd and Rod Jarman and William Cornell regarding that particular issue about how we're going to deliver project delivery moving forward, because obviously there's lots of things going on in the Parks team, and where is that going to sit about how we ensure the delivery of these projects. So it certainly has been a discussion, and linked into that, obviously, we've got the planning review carried out by EASY at the moment, who are going to come up with recommendations about structure and resourcing issues, and as to where that whole issue is going to come forward. So I would hope, between the discussions that Rob has had and Dawn and William have had, and the IEASY review about structure, we will be getting to a position of how we're going to see about project delivery. But I can understand the member concern.
And presumably you'll follow that up with us anyway as a committee.
Obviously, the recommendations of the IEASY will come through anyway, and obviously discussions that are feeding into that, and that's why Rob's had these discussions earlier to feed into the IEASY review, because they have to go up to CLT and obviously be presented to members.
Councillor English.
Yes, just to support that, and I think perhaps this may be a little presumptuous, but I think it would be worth asking this committee what their view is, because I personally strongly feel that with all the challenges and pressures that we have on the Parks team, and this is not meant to be a criticism of the Parks team in any way, But with all the pressures and things they have to do, it's too much to expect them to actually deliver the Section 106 programme in any way and manage their current workload, especially with vacancies in the section which are unlikely to be filled. So we need to have a delivery mechanism that makes sure that the money that's there now, which is only going to increase with the development profile in Maidstone, is dispersed. And if it is not dispersed, the local plan will not be deliverable, at least in the terms that the MPPF envisages and in the terms that our own local plan envisages. I would also point out that when we had the members' discussion, it was quite clear that across party there was little support for the effective withdrawal to free strategic parks and a block on new nature reserves and other activities. In fact, members across the board wanted a more involved process, more support for community groups, more support for nature reserves, more support for open space provision, but were perfectly well aware that that needs resourcing and support. So I actually think that there is no way around there being a structure within the planning department for what Section 106 delivery. And that isn't just for parks and open spaces. There are other areas where that needs developing too. Let's not single them out. There are other areas too. And so I would like to suggest that this committee place on record its view that it feels that as part of the planning review, that should be taken on board, and that a delivery officer within the planning area of the council be supported by this committee. Formally supported.
Do I have a seconder for that?
Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, Councillor Harwood. From the chair, I totally support what you're saying. Could I show of hands on that? I'd like to just put that straight to... That's absolutely excellent. Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor English, and Councillor Harwood.
I have one specific... yes.
Yes, we will note it as unanimous. Yeah.
Right. May I, just on one specific issue on the delivery of the 106s, I just want to be clear, and I'm asking officers just to look into this, because I may have got hold of the wrong end of the stick, but as you may know, I have been involved with One Maidstone as the council's elected member representative. There is a report on this section about the outstanding £61,000 with £141,000 from the next allocation towards supporting the activities that were town teams, which are now all within One Maidstone. I just want to check that that money is actually flowing through, because it is important, because we keep being told there's no money for events. Well, I just want to make sure that £61,000, which is for events, is actually being fed through to the right place, because, you know, if it is, fine, but if not, it could make a significant difference to what's actually delivered in the events programme in Maidstone. So can we just follow that up?
I can certainly follow that. As I said, I can't pinpoint the report that it was the head of Regeneration's report that effectively mentioned this Section 106 sums of money to be spent on the town centre improvements. What I can do is follow that up issue, and I can circulate to members the actual that money is being drawn down and is available. I think the issue is it just hasn't been spent, so it's not appearing on the list, but it is available to be spent on that particular project. I can get clarification out from the head of Regeneration and get that relayed from the Section 106 officer. But can I also, so I'll certainly do that as an action.
Yeah, sure.
Can I also point out one point, members, because obviously as part of the emerging local plan that you have approved, there are quite a lot of monitoring trigger mechanisms for the local plan. So it's effectively delivering the success of the local plan. Some of those issues are monitoring 38, 39 and 40 regarding open space. Might not cover all the areas, but it is something that is part of the local plan, effectively to assess the effectiveness and delivery of the local plan, we've put in to the local plan inspector who did agree with it, and these are the areas that we're looking at. So M38 is loss of designated open space as a result of development in hectares. M39 is delivery of open space allocations. M40 is delivery of new or improvements to existing designated open space in association with housing and mixed-use developments. So, in part, the local plan is in effect going to be monitoring. Now, obviously, I think that's where Mr Jarman and Dawn Hudd are looking at this issue of project delivery, because what he's written into the local plan is delivery of improvements to existing open space. So, within that local plan, he is actually, Mr Jarman, is in a way trying to see how, and obviously a lot of the developments you have approved and where this money is coming forward are part of this local plan. So that M40 is quite crucial as well. I'm not trying to take away the resolution you're just putting forward now, but there is that monitoring situation that's going to occur to ensure how effective and deliverable this local plan is being. So just to make members aware of that situation as well.
I think it complements it as much as anything else. It goes together, absolutely. Oh, we're singing from the same hymn sheet. Councillor Borton, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Councillor Harwood in English covered a lot of what I was going to say, actually. There is one issue that remains outstanding, which is I think we last discussed this in August, if I remember rightly, and I think I brought it up then. And I said, could we have this on, I think it was on a quarterly basis to the committee. Now, here we are in April, and we've not, from what I can remember, discussed it since August. So could I please have some sort of assurance and follow-through that this will actually come on a quarterly basis and not on this kind of ad hoc, twice-a-year sort of shambles we've got at the moment? Because I think it's very important that we keep a close eye on this, particularly having just taken the vote that we have done.
I think we can reassure that. It could be on a quarterly basis, definitely. It's very important, I absolutely agree. Okay. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually going to endorse Councillor Harwood's initial points, but I think that's been done quite well prior to me. I did want to say about the impact that some of these schemes being delayed has in terms of knock-on. There's a Hell Place scheme. It was a 2011 scheme. One of our borough councillors has lived in that development for several years, so it's certainly a scheme that's come forward. There's £100,000 towards fencing and £67,000 on new parking and pathway at Armstrong Road, South Park. Now, we've had a safety lining scheme along that stretch that's been ongoing for 4 years now at KCC, and in actual fact, around about 2 to 3 years ago, I was told by Parks that one side of the road safety measures would not be implementatable because there's this scheme for parking and fencing, which at that time appeared to be quite imminent. So the idea, the notion was wait for that to be delivered and then do the safety scheme. Now, I've had to split that scheme and work on one side of the safety project separately to both sides because of the fact that that's not come forward. And that's kind of a litmus test of some of these items. But if we look here, we've got a spend by date of November 2019, and the project status is to commence 2017 to 19. So I don't think that's amber. I think that's a glowing red. If we're looking at potentially 2019 for delivery and it runs out in 2019, given the history from 2011, I don't really have a great deal of faith that that is going to happen. But this is a safety scheme for KCC. It's quite possible that there are a bunch of community groups that are relying on other things, and they'll just lose interest if we just keep them waiting.
I certainly get your concern, and actually there's had to be, if I'm honest, quite a lot of work to get this report up to the stage where Parks team, and I don't want to push another section down because they're not here, and I'd like, you know, if there are particular questions that members want to ask for Jason Taylor's team and Phil Newcomb's team moving forward, then obviously we can get them to explain that situation. But I certainly know what we've been trying to do and working with them is to get this project delivery up. So we can get as much information to members saying, what are you spending it on? When have you spent it? What have you delivered? How much is left? So members have a clear idea of what's in the picture. Now, obviously, I have no control over what the Parks team, neither does Mr Jarman, because he has a different head of service, while William may be the overall director. But I think it's recognised about project delivery. I'm trying to sort of tread on eggshells here. I think it's recognised about project delivery that it's not happening, and it's not happening fast enough, and we need to look at a situation of how we can improve that. And I certainly know that's on the cards. How that's delivered, as I said, again, is outside my control. But
Councillor Clark, does that meet your point? I know it's a difficult one.
I think the general feeling in this committee has been noted, and I'm pleased about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Powell.
Yeah, most of the things have actually been mentioned tonight, but just following on what Councillor Harwood actually said earlier on, that the Section 106 money is often given as a condition. So if we're talking about condition for things that was actually approved in 2003, the condition, given that it takes 5 years for this and 4 years for that, the condition is obviously not being adhered to. So I think there's general consensus on this committee that we've got to be a lot tougher with the people that actually kind of implement that. And I know we're dealing with old stuff, but it's going to be very, very difficult to move forward with all the new Section 106 applications if we don't sort out what's happened in 2003 and 2004. So all I'm doing is echoing words that other people have mentioned tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Cox.
It's a question, really. If we were to put somebody in post or to specifically look after this as just a project manager, that would then disseminate the work and link with all the other departments? Because not only are we going to be talking about 106, I would assume that SIL would come into this, and then we're going to be talking serious amounts of money. So to actually put somebody in place so that they're not going, well, I've got to deal with the backlog, so that's going to take time. We need to have it now. So I think this needs to come via the chairman, and if so, or rather, other than that, I believe our committee should say to Heritage, Culture and Leisure that this should be very high on their horizon, because then it goes up to that director on that side. Because if it's parks, as we've all agreed, they're all trying to juggle as many balls as they can keep in the air, and we can't keep putting the workload and trying to break off another part of an officer. We need to have another officer to take care of this. And it's not that the money isn't there, because even if you ask for an architect to take charge of a job, he's going to take a percentage of the money that's going to make it happen. And I think we should be looking at that holistically and saying we need to have someone to take care of this money. Because if we don't, we are letting down the residents of our borough, because we've said we will deliver a local plan, but it is going to mean that we have to spend money on mitigation and 106, and so therefore it is very high on our priority to deliver everything that the developers are giving us, and that we have said, OK, we will have the development, but we need to have the resource to make it right.
On the floor, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Just really to emphasise Councillor Clark's point about, should some of these actually be colour-coded in the way that they are? I mean, for example, if you go to the first page, it's page 52, we've got an awful lot of schemes that say to commence in 2017-18. It commenced 2017-18, commenced 2017-18, commenced 20... And pages, I just don't believe it. I know that the Parks Technical Officer has spent the whole of the last 2 weeks dealing with Southern Water with an issue that's blown up in one point place in a high street. So if you're putting this into an action plan or your target for the year, all you need is one Southern Water problem which takes all your officer time, and you can't deliver it with the staffing that we've actually got. And by virtue of that, because we're close up to the point where we lose the cash, we're losing hundreds of thousands of pounds, potentially millions of pounds, you know, without over-egging the pudding. This is big money. So this is back to this point around there's a real urgency to getting a delivery project officer in post, because, you know, this is... It's wishful thinking, I think, in terms of some of the targets that we've got in here, because we've not been able to deliver some of these. I know for a fact that the groundwork, for example, on Astley Road, Kent Music School, which was a 2010 scheme, all of the groundwork for the projects to be funded was carried out 5 or 6 years ago. Probably it's now obsolete and will have to be changed, so the work will have to be done again. And it's in here as 2017-18, when frankly it could have been done in 2012 or whatever, when all of the groundwork was done by an officer who left the employment at this council 4 or 5 years ago. So I think there was a genuinely worry here, and if you can take back, Mr. Bailey, the fact that, you know, we're being told all the time we've got no money, and here we have got money, and yet for want of a bit of paint, we're not doing it, and it's a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood, and I think your point's very, very well made, and we will pursue it, I think, yes, as a matter of urgency. Councillor Clark.
I just wanted to make one small point. I think the reason that we're in this situation is because somebody senior, whoever it may be across the years, has not had an objective in their outcomes for the year where it specifically says you will deliver. It will be some targeted objective with a KPI around section 106. Now, we can get this officer in place, but I think it's more than that. They need to have a KPI for this, but the manager, the director of this group needs to also have a big fat KPI about the delivery of section 106, and then that will make sure there's someone in place and drive that to conclusion during the year. That's what we're missing, and I think that's another point that we should take forward from this discussion.
I think Mr. Jarman was playing devil's advocate when he put in policy M40 at the local plan, because he actually was saying that in terms of the KPI, this M40 is something that is going to have to be reported in terms of what we call the AMR, the Annual Monitoring Report. So actually this issue, whilst it won't be on covalent reporting, it will be set out in the Council's monitoring of the local plan delivery. So in a way we're putting it into a different document in terms of the Annual Monitoring Report, which will be report every April on year basis. And that's what he was really keen to see. By putting that in there, he's forcing the delivery and forcing us to say, well, what are we going to do about it? There needs to be a council concern. So in a way that has been looked at, and I think Mr. Jarman was trying to force the matter through the local plan, which is quite the right way to do it. Members are looking at other ways as well, but which I think is quite right. You want to see delivery of projects, and I get that. You know, the Section 106s are meant to mitigate the impacts of the development. They're not meant to be stored up and used for general maintenance. They're meant to be delivering mitigation for the development. So you've got no issue from me.
The Councillor Round.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bailey, for those comments, because I mean the first thing I wanted to do was to support and second the proposal that Councillor Clark actually made, because I mean I'm definitely very much for that. But I just wanted to, I mean, we could talk about this. I think we're all unanimously agreed on the subject, quite frankly, but I just want to make a point that we still keep on over-egging and over-emphasising parks and recreation. Councillor English did allude in his earlier presentation to say it covers all aspects. We also have several mechanisms that need to be put in place for project delivery, and I'm particularly concerned about the health ones. There's an awful lot of money in health. There's an awful lot needs to be done in health throughout the whole borough. And we need to make sure that we've got project mechanisms in place for delivering these health projects, because A, we've got a crisis in terms of air pollution. We've also got problems continuing as far as mental health is concerned. We've got a number of other issues, and indeed there are surgeries fit to bursting in this actual borough at the moment. So priorities for that as well. So not just parks and recreation. We've got a whole gamut of areas, including events and things like that, to be looking at. So there's an awful lot of work to be done. Thank you.
of course you can, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor, to pick you up, pick up on that one. M41, I hate to say, is another one where particularly was raised with concern with the inspector, what with the Client Earth Court of Appeal decision, and obviously there is an indicator again to be fed into the AMR, which sets out its M41 progress in achieving compliance with EU directive, national regulatory requirements for air quality within the AQMA. So again, you are going to get yearly reports, whether that's what you're seeking to do within an AMR, to see how the council is delivering on its statutory requirements. So you may want a bit more, but that's what the local plan is seeking to deliver as well.
Right. If there are no more questions from members, then we've agreed the resolution, which is very important. This is very urgent, and I think the message has got across. For the moment, I think we can just note this as it stands. It will be quarterly, so and we will be monitoring this very carefully. Councillor English, would you like to...
I think it was formally proposed and seconded that there be another, probably a separate motion on looking at appropriate KPIs, and I think the committee was in favour of, probably in favour of that, but it was proposed and seconded.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise, but yes, I mean, I have no problem with it personally. If you appropriate KPIs is a very good use of the English language, I think. So, is everybody in favour of that? Okay, good.
Obviously, I've got to take that back to Mr. Jarman. So, and obviously, it's very important that we define exactly what that KPI is. I'd need to go and have a discussion with my colleague in policy who produces, because that's where the KPI would sit under the local plan. Can I just be very clear what members were seeking on the KPI? Because obviously that has to get put into the council systems, and I need to discuss that with my colleague.
Okay, Councillor Clark or Councillor English, both of you hands at the same time.
I'm happy to delegate that for you to come with a proposal, so I'm happy to do that. But really, the spirit of it is that we need to be able to very specifically see that as these come forward, they are being delivered. We need something that specifically says that your performance for the year will be assessed on your ability to deliver these Section 106s. And I think that if we had a very targeted KPI which had been measured over the last 5 years, I think somebody would have a problem reaching their objectives to this point.
I think okay, so we delegate it to officers. They will come back to us
for review, perhaps,
yeah,
perhaps the next session, or,
yes.
or if not, then at least an update as to when we will receive.
Yeah, I think that would work pretty well with everybody, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Right, I think we've probably concluded Section 1. We've had a good discussion, actually, so it's really good, but it is so important. And thank you, members, for your suggestions. I think they've been very good. Appeal decisions, agenda item 17. This is very good, I think, a very good performance, if I may say so. Councillor Bolton.
It's a jolly good performance, and I'd quite like to put on record, I think there's an inaccuracy in the report. At the very, very last word, I think it was actually a committee decision rather than a delegated decision. But could we please put on record, Mr. Chairman, our thanks to the team at Maidstone Borough Council who conducted that appeal, along with the Save Fant Farm Community Group, who, with no planning training whatsoever, a group of like-minded residents, worked together, raised a hell of a lot of money, did an awful lot to protect their community and protect the borough of Maidstone as a whole from an inappropriate development. And our joy, really, that the inspector found on our side in that case. I think it was a very good example of where this council works very well with a community group and has got an outcome which I think is something that will be supported by members across the board here. So I just wanted to put that on record because it's a very important site for some of us in particular, and I think it's worth noting particularly.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Yes, Councillor English.
Officers of this council often come in for criticism, quite often unfair criticism, sometimes not, but usually. And the fact of the matter is that in all of these appeal cases, officers of this council have acquitted themselves extremely well and are to be congratulated for their work. The decision on Fant Farm is a victory for local councillors, across party, for the local community, for officers and for everyone. It's disappointing that we didn't win on all of the arguments, particularly the traffic one, but however, it is nevertheless a very satisfying victory. I would also like to pick out item 4, the award of costs at Bearsted Golf Course. It is not that often that you actually win an award of costs. It's actually quite hard to do. And the officers are to be congratulated for that performance as well as the many others. Thank you on behalf of the committee and the public for the work you've done on these and others recently.
Thank you, Councillor English. We'll put Councillor Borton and your statements on the record as far as we can. But it's very, very good. If there's no more comments, Chairman's announcements. You're pleased to know there aren't any, so I can formally close the meeting. And thank you, members, very much. Thank you.